It kind of feels like we were just here, right? Trying to figure out this whole time change thing just a few months ago. Well, here we are again. And the time is about to change for us once again on March 10th. And this time we are springing forward. Now, typically this time change isn't as disruptive as the fall time change for our kids' sleep, but there's still some really easy things that you can do to make sure that this doesn't totally ruin your kids' sleep schedule. Personally, I always like this time change because it means that the sun's going to stay out later, that spring is coming, and where I live in the Northeast, it's been like cold and dark for the last few months, so I'm ready for it. But it can also be a stressful time because whenever there's a time change, it has the risk of totally throwing our kids' sleep schedule out of whack. But there's a few things that we can do to avoid this being like a major disruption. So let's jump in. Overnight on Saturday, March 9th, most of the US is going to spring forward, meaning we're going to be losing an hour of sleep. So at 2 a.m. on Sunday, March 10th, it's magically going to become 3 a.m. Now, losing an hour of sleep is just not cool, especially because most of us, kids and adults, aren't getting enough sleep anyway. In fact, I think this is so interesting. There's actually been studies that have shown that when daylight savings time starts in March, the next day, there is an increase in heart attacks, an increase in diagnosed mood disorders, and an increase in car accidents. That's just from like a 1 hour collective loss of sleep as a society. So that's a warning for you parents too. Make sure that you go to bed early and get enough sleep and be careful on the roads. Now we're going to prepare our kids for this time change by doing the same thing. I'm going to teach you this process that I call hopping back bedtime. So what is hopping back bedtime? If you followed my tips in the fall for the fall time change, we're going to be doing something very similar, but like in reverse order. So I'm going to teach you how to gradually move your child's bedtime earlier in the days leading up to this spring time change. For kids 2 to 5 years old, I recommend starting this process about 3 days before the time changes, and you're going to move their sleep time in 20-minute increments. Bedtime and nap time are going to move 20 minutes earlier each day. Let me walk you through an example. So let's say that like a normal bedtime for your 3-year-old is 7 p.m. So what you're going to do is 3 days before the time changes. So on Thursday, March 7th, you're going to move bedtime 20 minutes earlier. So instead of 7, you will put them down at 6:40. Then on Friday, the next night, you're just going to move it 20 minutes earlier again. So now you're putting them down at 6:20. And then on Saturday, you're going to move it 20 minutes earlier so that you're putting them down at 6 o'clock. Then on Sunday night, when Sunday comes and the time has changed, when the clock says 7 p.m., it's actually going to feel in your child's body like 6 p.m. did on Saturday night. And that's the time that you've already adjusted their bedtime to, so you can go back to using the clock and put them down at 7 p.m. on Sunday. If your child's over 5 years old, you probably don't need to spend as much time like making such small 20-minute steps. You could probably just do like a 30-minute chunk. So you would just start on Friday and you would move bedtime to 6:30. And then on Saturday, you would move bedtime to 6. And then same thing on Sunday, when the clock says 7, it's going to feel in your child's body like 6 o'clock did the night before. And that's the time that you've already adjusted them to. So you can go back to using their bedtime of 7 p.m. Okay, now let's say you didn't watch this video in time or you forgot about the time change and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, the time's going to change tomorrow. Even if you just split the difference and put your kid to bed a little bit earlier on that Saturday night, that could help. So let's say you've done nothing in the days leading up to it. On Saturday, just try to put your kid to bed 30 minutes early. So again, if their normal bedtime is 7, try putting them to bed at 6:30 on Saturday. That will just help when Sunday night comes. That will help them still be able to go to bed at their normal time of 7 p.m. All right, a few more tips for you as it relates to the time change. First of all, be realistic. The younger the child is, the more difficult the time change might be for them. Once your child has well-established good sleep habits, it's going to make tolerating the time change much easier. Once your child builds up like that sleep muscle memory and they're getting that good healthy sleep that they need consistently, it makes sleep not so fragile. Their whole sleep schedule doesn't get thrown off that easily just by a simple time change. So if you need help establishing good healthy sleep habits and a good consistent bedtime, then I encourage you to join me in my next Toddler Sleep Masterclass. It's a free class. All you have to do is save your spot, and you can do that at toddlersleepmasterclass.com. All right, my second tip for you is stick to the clock. So once the time changes on Sunday, you really want to use the clock to control your kids' sleep schedule. For example, if they normally go to bed at 7, like the example we were using, don't let them stay up super late because they're just going to get overtired, and overtiredness is the heart of all sleep problems, basically. So if their bedtime is 7, even though it's going to feel like 6 o'clock in their body, try not to let them stay up too late because it's just going to start you in a bad cycle that you don't want to be in. And like if they normally wake up in the morning at 6:30, you may have to wake them up that Monday morning, and that's okay. That's going to help them get back on schedule. So really stick to the clock once the time change happens. My third tip is be patient. It's going to take all of our bodies just a few days to really get used to the time change because, the sun is going to be rising at a different time and setting at a different time, and it throws our circadian rhythms off a little bit. But if you use the hopping back bedtime strategy before the time change, and then you use the clock on Sunday, March 10th after the time does change, that's going to help a lot. If you need more help establishing great sleep habits with your kids, check out this video.